We are live in the Facebook group for the Small Business Owner Mastermind, as well as the Merged Media Facebook page. I'm here. I'm with David, as well as Steve Toth, who's an SEO consultant, SEO expert, and guru, who also just recently, as of half an hour ago, won an award for Best In-House Team at the Canadian Search Awards. So that's super exciting. So we're going to dive into it with Steve today. But to introduce today's podcast guest, I'm passing the conch over to David. Go ahead, Dave.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Merge Marketing Podcast. My name is David, co-host and producer, along with my partner, Jason Hunt. Today, we're pleased to welcome Steve Toth to the show. After 2 years of heading up SEO strategy at the 350-person SaaS company that is FreshBooks, Steve turned them into a client so that he could focus on his freelance SEO business and his 4,000 plus subscriber email list, which I just signed up to last night, actually, and that is SEOnotebook.com. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. And yes, I did notice that, so thanks for signing up.
Appreciate it.
A little late, but better late than never.
Yeah, I am. I'm pumped about getting all those SEO tips. It's actually funny because a mutual friend of ours, Todd, was telling me that he signed up for it and that he's been using some of the templates that you give away. And I was like, wow, really? Well, maybe I should check this out too. So I remembered last night. So
awesome.
Cool.
Well, yeah, try to give away my best stuff there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I guess for today's episode, the title, I love the title. It without a doubt caught the attention of probably a few people today that are listening. And I'm pretty sure many are excited to hear about your story of not only how you started your business, SEO Notebook, but how you were able to turn your former employer into your client. So I'm willing to bet there's probably a few people out there that would love to do that today. So let's just start off with your journey from really start to finish. So you can go back as far as you like, but at the very least, how you got into SEO, and then where you went from there, your journey through FreshBooks, and then now SEO Notebook, and ultimately turning them into your client, and how that happened.
Yeah, it's a 10-year journey. I'll try to spare you the super details, but I've been in SEO for about 10 years, and I actually entered it through atypical angle, I would say, more like the copywriting and blogging angle versus like your maybe web developers and stuff like that. I was working at a web dev company, and I was just tasked with starting their blog in 2010 and had a lot of free reign, and ended up writing the first blog that I ranked was about when to redo your website. And I just thought it was super cool that I ranked and that this actually had the potential to bring in customers, and I was kind of hooked on SEO after that. That was in 2010. Up until 2017, I'd worked at 2 different agencies. The last agency didn't work out well at all. I was actually laid off from my job in 2018. And it just wasn't a fit, like culturally, strategy, just generally just butted heads and didn't really feel like it was the right place. And I think the employer also felt mutually. I'd sort of been searching around to see like where I could get a job, and saw the job at FreshBooks. A good friend of mine had actually already applied to FreshBooks for this SEO manager position. And I actually didn't apply until he was not in the running anymore, because I didn't want to compete with him and I didn't really want to take his spot, so to speak. So it was actually worked out really well for me, because throughout that entire interview process, he kind of told me, it's like, you're going to be talking to this person, this is how they're like, and like kind of briefed me throughout that whole like 4-stage interview process. But finally ended up getting the job in May 2018 is when I started at FreshBooks. And I'd never worked at a place like that. It was just like total kind of like fun tech company atmosphere. We had a budget to work with. There hadn't been really that much success with SEO prior to me and like this really small team that we were a part of. We just kind of started to slowly gather up steam. ranking for invoice template, and like 110 long tail variations of that keyword on all targeted on different pages, sort of a hub and spoke model of SEO. And once that started to sort of pick up steam, and that keyword invoice template is searched 200,000 times a month, we started to get like some recognition, right? So somebody did a LinkedIn like teardown on our strategy, like a case study, a video case study on our strategy. It was talked about a little bit. I had a LinkedIn post go viral where I picked up like 2 sizable clients. I had just been doing an SEO side hustle previous to that. So yeah, I don't know where I should stop, but that was around June 2019 is when things really began to pick up for me with my side hustle.
So I think a lot of our business owners, Steve, are going to be small business owners, might not necessarily be those big brands, but what was it like to run a large scale SEO campaign for a massive client such as FreshBooks?
It was pretty daunting at first because we basically at the beginning of 2019, we knew it was like make or break, like rank for this keyword or we fail and we probably lose our jobs. Like that was just very, very clear cut. Because with SaaS, like we know exactly, what the trial to paid conversion rate is, what the average, the lifetime value is of each customer. And it was like very clear cut in terms of what numbers we needed to hit. So on that end, it was quite daunting to see like, could we actually rank for this keyword? But once we did, the floodgates sort of opened because they're just like, do more, right? And then you're managing a much larger budget. You've got sort of like freedom to do what you want. People trust you in the company, and frankly, it was a lot of fun.
You use the word trust, and it's funny because we have these same arguments or debates internally, and we find any SEO client that we have, usually after about 4 to 6 months, they really take their hands off of it. They don't micro, but in those initial couple months, there's always going to be buyer's remorse because they don't see those immediate results from the efforts that you make on SEO. How do you kind of curb those comments that clients might say to you when they don't see those results right away, but they're getting billed each month for it?
Yeah, I think sometimes you have to use examples from your previous clients, like, hey, this is what situation they were in 6 months ago. And, now we're really starting to see those returns. It was actually funny because yesterday I woke up to an email and the subject line was SEO spend. And it was a client who'd been with me for 3 months. I was like, really, SEO spend? And then like, I read it like half awake in the morning, and then I reread it. And she's like, "Oh, she wants to up our budget." Nice. So I think with clients, like setting the expectations early, letting them know that their case is not unique, that you've probably been through many other clients in the same situation where it takes, Google doesn't just reward you right away, right? It needs time to give you credit for what you're doing, or else if it did reward you, it would if it rewarded everybody who just suddenly decided to publish a web page or do SEO, like the results would be going like this all the time, right? Sometimes they're a little bit rocky, but it wouldn't be to that extreme, right? So just knowing that like that is totally normal and that you can brace them for that, I think is really important.
So on like when we're doing social for clients, it's very, very transparent because they have access to a content calendar. They can see all the content that's being scheduled. There's no smoke and mirrors. It's there for you to see. So how do you kind of structure it for clients in a way where they want to see what you're doing? Are you transparent? How transparent are you with your clients?
I'm pretty transparent. We know basically like for content, we just kind of go like month to month. I'm like very much a content guy. So I enjoy that kind of like what next kind of thing. It's not something that I tend to plan out months in advance. But for links, I'm 100% transparent with them on all of that kind of stuff. And then just like with regards to like reporting, I like to kind of like do your standard reporting, like we do a Google Data Studio dashboard, but I'll also just pop my head into GSC and try and find some like, month over month wins to kind of share.
Cool. Well, that's great. I know that will help us for sure. But I want to go back a little bit because you were continuing your story, and we made it up until the end of you being done at FreshBooks, and you referenced your side hustle. So let's dive into that side hustle a little bit because I'm
Sure.
curious to know, one, what is the side hustle? You can tell our viewers what that side hustle was. Did you start it while you were at FreshBooks, and were they cool with it, or did they not know? And then ultimately, how did you leave?
Yeah. So yeah, it's there's a few things in there, and also there's like the journey of like starting my email list right sandwiched in the middle of all that. So FreshBooks knew when I signed up with them, like they really liked me, and like I could tell that the interview process went well. And like when it was time to actually sign like the formal documents and all that stuff, I told them I had one client. It was true. I was a law firm, and they were totally fine with it. And like being FreshBooks as well, like, you know, we're designed for small business owners. Invoicing like is sort of almost encouraging that atmosphere of entrepreneurship, right? So I did have that on my side. But, you know, as things began to sort of scale up, and, you know, I had this post that went viral that was about ranking #1 for a 200,000 search keyword. I picked up like 2 pretty big clients by that point, and I was like, wow, like I decided to charge large. Like, you know, like not everybody has that luxury, because if you're just like on your own and you have nothing else, like you may kind of like bend on what prices you offer. But in that case, like I already had the full-time job and I really had nothing to lose. So I just decided to like charge like a very decent retainer. And you know, working on those 2 clients like in my evenings was like fairly manageable up to a point. But you know, as time wore on and like the sort of summer ended and fall came, like another couple of clients hopped on board, and like suddenly like I had zero life.
Yeah.
Like and I knew what I was doing. I knew I was planning an exit for a while. But it was really like nose to the grindstone every night. I have a 4-year-old daughter. As soon as she, you know, went to bed, it was like back to the computer and working each night. And basically, the advice that I would give to somebody who's like in that position where they've got a side hustle going and they work full time is to don't actually leave your job until it's like costing you money to stay in your job. So for me, like when the new year hit, like I literally had like 3 projects that I wouldn't be able to do if I continued to work full time. So in my last month at FreshBooks, I was taking most of my vacation days off so I could get the work done. And you know, when I approached my employer, I was just very open and transparent and said, like, you know, I love like what we've done here. We've done amazing things at this company, and I truly respect and admire the company. I would love to continue doing, you know, working in some capacity, but I kind of need to pursue, you know, my dream as well, right? So they were very cool with it. I think my yeah, actually, I won't say it about who was going to offer me a client, and out of all that. But there was actually some people within FreshBooks who referred clients to me.
Nice.
But yeah, it was kind of just like it felt like a very safe transition at that point, because you know, I banked up like, you know, 6 or 7 months of steady retainers, and then had all this new business coming in. And I also was growing my email list. So at that point, the email list, SEOnotebook.com, was at about 2,000, and I felt like, you know, it was pretty good. Like I was on a roll, and that eventually that would provide me some leads too. So all in all, it was a kind of like a slow exit, but it's been great so far. I'm still employed as a consultant for FreshBooks.
And how did that happen? Was that in the initial conversation of, hey guys, I you know, I gotta pursue this dream of mine, and it's coming together. I can't pass up this opportunity. How did it then go from I'm quitting to do you want to be my client?
It actually went directly to like reducing the number of days that I worked at FreshBooks. Like that's how I tabled it. I said, can I go down to like 2 days per week, right? And at that point, like they were kind of like, well, do you still want to be an employee or do you want to be an SEO? Like, what do you actually want? And I kind of, my wife wanted me to keep the benefits and all that stuff, like just in case. But I just wanted to be a contractor and have that freedom. So yeah, like technically I'm 2 days a week at FreshBooks, but we're pretty relaxed in terms of just letting the work get done, and just I can work on my own schedule.
Awesome. So I guess they still kept their own internal SEO team and then just tasked you with certain tasks as a consultant. Is that how that works?
Yeah, well, our actual SEO team is only 2 people.
Wow.
Myself leading strategy, and then this guy Wesley, my good friend and colleague, who heads up technical there and sort of more like on the implementation side of things. But in terms of like what I've done there, we've had about like 7 like major initiatives, like large page build outs that I've basically architected.
Awesome.
Very cool. I wanted to say, maybe I think some of our audience might be interested in what is SEO Notebook? What exactly is it, and how can people sign up for it?
Yeah, so I guess like the story that I always kind of like preface it with is like I'm not the most organized person. Like I'll be honest, like my inbox currently says like 2,000 unread emails or whatever, but I'm in love with SEO. So I was thinking about like what's the best way for me to like store my ideas, like if I've read something, oftentimes I think Facebook is a huge treasure trove of information for SEO, and just reading things there and wanting to kind of keep them. I would Slack message myself, or I would keep them in emails. Like I didn't have a good spot to keep everything. And I made a post on the Facebook group SEO Signals Lab, just asking what people do to sort of categorize all the info that they have. And I decided at the end of that like, why not try Evernote? Like at this point, I had no idea for the newsletter or anything. And then once I started to sort of catalog all this stuff, I said like, it would be cool if just like one day a week, if I just emailed 1 page from my notebook out to my list. And that's sort of where the idea was like born. And then, I thought about it, and didn't take long for me to realize it was a good idea. And I went and bought like a premium domain, my first ever premium domain. It was nothing crazy. It was like $750, but I just bought it and then started it up.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just had a second question of that is you said you cultivated an email list or grew your email list to 2,000 for SEO Notebook. Can you lend any tips or tricks, or how did you grow that audience to 2,000?
Yeah, so it wasn't just a result of me being very passive observer in the SEO world and suddenly trying to enter and grow a list and grow a following. I had actually just been really genuinely engaged in a lot of Facebook groups, helping people out with their problems, offering advice, learning myself, direct messaging with people over like different things that I was doing, asking for feedback, giving feedback. So I'd already been pretty entrenched in the space on Facebook, with 2 main groups, the Proper SEO group and SEO Signals Lab. And so when it came to like launch and sort of tell people about it, people already knew like that I had a good reputation in all those forums. And I also had like quite a few of those folks like added to my Facebook friends list. So when I announced it, I launched with 100 subscribers, and it grew pretty quickly. I think within the first 2 months I had 800, and then till now I have about 4,200.
Wow. That is impressive. And, I guess the next question I have is, well, first off, I am so thankful that my email actually got responded to and that 200 or 2,000 pile of unread emails. So, that is amazing. But the story that you've shared so far of you basically going from your full-time job into your side hustle, which is now your full-time gig, sounded pretty good and pretty quote unquote easy. I'm not going to say easy, but it was pretty seamless. I would imagine that's not the case. There must have been some sort of challenge that you faced in the transition period from FreshBooks full time to being on your own and being responsible for supporting your family. What was a challenge that you faced? And how can maybe somebody listening today that wants to venture out and start their own business or now focus on their side hustle full time or turn their employer into their client, what can you give for them to maybe do differently?
Yeah, well, I think there's two scenarios, and I fall into the last one, which is like having a family and a wife and a child. Doing it through like those responsibilities is, I think, a lot tougher if you're just like single and you can afford to kind of make those choices and eat craft dinner if that's what you can survive on for however long you want to do. So for me, it was kind of like a bit tough to convince my family that this was a good idea. I come from a family of like, they're all teachers. Like my parents, my sister and her husband, my wife, like everybody are teachers. And in that world, you have like a very like stable job. And for, from the outside in, like I worked at FreshBooks, I had a good job, like, been advancing or whatever. Like why jeopardize that? Like it didn't really equate. And I think a lot of people will run into that if you don't, come from a, family that is more entrepreneurial and whatnot. So just convincing and trying to get the trust and buy-in from your family can be a challenge. As things like kind of went on, and I had like the choice to take on another client and then to take on another client. Those like each of those conversations, because I was obviously like very open about it with my wife and like what I was doing, was like, are you sure you want to do this, right? And like eventually my wife knew that like my end goal expectation was to exit FreshBooks and turn them into a client, but I don't think she trusted me that it was going to work out 100%.
I admire that, Steve, because I mean, I'm fortunate, and I guess I got it easy because, my wife grew up in an entrepreneurial family. Her mother owned a travel agency for 30 years. And so she grew up, understanding, they're not always going to be home for dinner. You know what I mean? So if my wife wasn't as forgiving, I'd probably have a much more challenging time maintaining a healthy relationship. You know what I mean? Just because of the amount of hours that you work and the amount of dedication that you give to a business. So one of the challenges that I've had over the years has been the ability to separate work from the work-life balance and separating it. Are there any tips or tricks that you've been able to maintain that have that clear separation to spend time with your 4-year-old and your wife and be able to get quality work done as well?
Yeah. So for me, I break up the day into 3 chunks. I'm usually online from about 10 till 12:30. Go and have like an hour lunch with the family, make lunch for everybody. If I want to spend and extend that a little bit longer, I can, just depending on if I have meetings or not. Then I'm usually back in the saddle from like 2 to 5. And then that's non-negotiable time from like 5 o'clock until 8 o'clock. And then I'll usually like work like every other night, but always like make time to watch like either Netflix or a movie or whatever each evening. So that's my decompression time.
Nice. What are you watching?
I'm halfway through this one called Class Action Park, which is about a very dangerous water slide park in New Jersey that existed in the 80s. It was just crazy. They have this water slide that goes down and then goes in a loop and then goes down again. And it's just madness, like that this existed. So it's on Crave for anybody in Canada, or on HBO if anybody's in the States.
Cool. What's the name of that again?
Class Action. It's called the park was just called Action Park, but the movie is called Class Action Park, and I think you can guess why.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I'm sure your wife's happy to have some of your time back to watch some Netflix and that sort of thing. So that's great. Appreciate you sharing your story and some advice with our audience today. I really hope there are people out there today that are thinking about potentially starting their own business or making their side hustle their full-time business, and today helps. So Jay, you got anything else before we wrap things up?
Yeah, Steve, what's the best way our audience can get in touch with you if they have any questions?
Probably SEOnotebook.com or just my name on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter a little bit at SEO_notebook, but LinkedIn or my website is probably the best place.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Steve. We appreciate all your time today, and we end our podcast with the same question every single time, and that is, if you could choose one person to be your brand advocate, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh man, that's tough. That's really tough. I don't know. Honestly, that's really tough. That is a super tough question because like who knows about SEO? I guess Todd Foster.
Oh no. Oh my God. I can't believe you just said that. You know what? We've had two people say that they would want Jay to be their brand advocate. And I had a feeling you'd say Todd Foster. I need to get some friends on this show. I haven't had anybody.
No book for David yet. We're talking about getting David's mother on for the podcast. So
absolutely. Well, hey, you know what? Todd is a great brand ambassador to have, so we'll go with Todd Foster, and we'll end it there. So, Steve, again, thank you so much, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right, take care, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers.
Awesome. So another episode in the books, Steve Toth, and then that's a great story. I think it's I think having that experience with FreshBooks, but FreshBooks being so cool in the whole entire experience with being okay with helping out Steve in his new venture and becoming a client. Like, how many companies out there are able or willing to do that?
Yeah, it's probably not many. It's such an interesting story, and good for him. The whole time I was listening to him explain SEO Notebook, and I'm like, man, this is genius. You could probably do this for anything. Like in his case, he loves SEO, and he was always making notes about SEO, things that he'd learned or picked up or whatever, and he was just putting them in a notebook. But for anybody else that's doing Facebook ads or gardening or whatever it might be, is probably doing the exact same thing and could do something similar, don't you think?
It's essentially scratching your own itch, but monetizing it. You know what I mean? And in a previous episode, we had Itai Paz, who researches all of this digital marketing, cultivates all of these articles, and turns them into a daily newsletter. It's the same type of thing, right? It's you looking at what is helping. Like, everyone does that. Everyone has these little things that they do. It's a matter of figuring out what that is and maybe trying to create a monetization model from it, right? And Steve did a great job of that with SEO Notebook, and it helps quarterback the business as well, because it's bringing that value to your audience. And naturally, if anybody has a question or wants to pay somebody to do their SEO, where are they going to go? Right? They're probably going to talk to Steve.
For sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again, everybody, for watching on Facebook. Thank you for listening on the podcast. If you don't know, now you know. Tell your friends, go over and subscribe. Give us 5 stars in the review. We'll love you forever. Thank you so much.
See you, everybody.